Welcome, everyone. This is going to be so fun. How's it going? I'm Mike Hartington from the DevRel team here at Ionic. I'm joined by...
Hey, everybody. My name is Ely Lucas, and I am on the Capacitor team. It's awesome to be here.
Let's get our faces in for a little bit, just so we can get everyone involved and highlight some of these cool comments. Let's see, we got Jose coming in from Portugal. How's it going, Jose?
Yeah, how's everybody doing today? France, I see France in the house. Hello, Bryce.
We got, IT Mike. Welcome to the show. How you doing, buddy? France, we had someone coming from the French Riviera. So many people from all around the world. Yeah. Thank you all for joining us. This is gonna be a great time. We're going to give a quick little presentation on Capacitor, talk about some of the cool things that we have going on inside of this latest release, and then give a nice little demo. Figured this is going to be real fun to just show people all the cool new features that come in Capacitor, and give some backstory for some of the changes that we've made and some of the things that we've done to make it this pretty awesome release. So let's see, what do we have for time? All right, well, let's just kind of kick it off, and I'll hand this over to Eli and get our slides back. So Eli, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. Well, hello, everyone. Like I said earlier, my name is Ely Lucas, and I'm the technical team lead for the Capacitor project. And today, I'm super excited to talk to you about Capacitor and the latest V3 release. However, I'm sure there are a few people out there that are hearing about Capacitor for the very first time. So let's start with a recap of what Capacitor is. Capacitor is our open source native app runtime that you can use to build apps for the web, Android, and iOS using web technologies that you know and love. Capacitor provides a means to package up your web assets and make a native binary that can be distributed to all the app stores. And it could be any type of web app. You can use Angular, React, Vue, pretty much anything that you would want, including no framework at all, if you happen to roll that way. You can use the Ionic framework to give your app a native look and feel, or something else entirely like Tailwind to provide a completely unique look for your app. Capacitor then connects your app to the native layer, giving you access to functionality of the platform, such as hardware access to the camera, GPS, or other sensors, and access to the OS features such as push notifications, contacts, and sharing. We love Capacitor as it helps us deliver on our mission to empower you, the web developer, to create amazing apps on the platforms that you care about. Capacitor takes a web-first approach when building apps. What this means is that you start by building a Capacitor app just like you would any other web application. You pick your framework, you start up a new project, and you use the dev tooling that you are already accustomed to. You build in the browser and enjoy all the great productivity benefits that web development offers. When you're ready, you can start to dive into the native layer by using Capacitor plugins. We offer many official plugins to get you access to a wide variety of native platform features that you need. And beyond our plugins, there are a multitude of community-based plugins that can take you even further. However, access to the native layer doesn't stop there. Every app built with Capacitor is a real native app. Capacitor provides you the ability to write your own custom native code in Swift, Java, or Kotlin, and it's easily accessible in your web app via Capacitor's native bridge to JS functionality. Our goal is never to let you feel like you're stuck when you're using Capacitor. There's always a way to drop down into the native platform to do what you need. You might have heard of a little project called Cordova before. At Ionic, we love Cordova and have been heavily involved with it over the years. However, we had some of our own ideas on how we could improve the experience for our own developers using the Ionic framework, and started the Capacitor project as a way to realize those ideas. The web dev ecosystem today is way different than what it used to be when Cordova was first introduced. Languages, build systems, toolings, and bundlers have changed drastically over the years. Capacitor is our modern take on Cordova, built from the ground up to utilize web development workflows that devs use today. However, we know there's a vast amount of investment done for Cordova throughout the years by many companies and contributors, and that's why we've made it so that Capacitor has a backwards compatibility layer with Cordova plugins. The majority of Cordova plugins will work with Capacitor out of the box. And if you have an existing Cordova app, the upgrade process is relatively straightforward, and we have a guide on our docs at the site linked down below to help you out. When we launched version 1 of Capacitor 2 years ago, we weren't sure of the response it would have. After all, we developed it for our own needs to have more control of the stack for Ionic framework developers. We didn't foresee the amazing response it would have from web development community overall. We've seen devs from all over interested in taking their web applications and turning them into mobile apps with Capacitor, even those not using Ionic. The growth has been great. We recently moved past 500,000 downloads per month via NPM, and the community has given us great feedback, scoring Capacitor as the #1 mobile toolkit in terms of user satisfaction in the State of JS mobile survey in 2020. As Capacitor adoption grows, we are continuing to invest in the project, and that brings us to Capacitor 3. Today, I'm excited to talk to you about some of the great stuff we have in Capacitor 3, which just launched 2 weeks ago. But even in the short window that Cat 3 has been live, we are already seeing that nearly half of all installs are for version 3. Let's take a peek at some of the new stuff. First, let's talk about performance, which is on the top of mind for anyone thinking about starting a new app. At Ionic, it's always been a goal of ours that the apps you build are performant and offer a great user experience. With Capacitor 3, we've improved the underlying architecture to make sure this gets even better. For Capacitor 3, we achieved this with optimizations that only brought in code for the features that you need. This resulted in a reduced app bundle size, which helps improve the launch time of the app. Let's see what changes that we made to accomplish this. Capacitor has over 20 official plugins developed and supported by Ionic. These plugins used to be a part of the main Capacitor package. This made it easy to get started with all the plugins, but it did have some downsides. First of all, when your app was built, the code for all the plugins were a part of your main application bundle, even the plugins that you didn't use. This caused larger than necessary bundle sizes, and larger bundles mean longer startup times. Second, all the plugin permissions that were included in the Capacitor core needed to be defined in the plist and manifest files since there was code in your executables that called these APIs. This caused lots of confusion and would sometimes even result in problems getting apps approved for distribution. In Capacitor 3, each of the official plugins are now distributed as their own package. So now you pick the plugin that you need and you don't worry about the rest. Let's see how this works. This is how you would import a plugin in Capacitor 1 and 2. You import the plugin for Capacitor core and then grab the class that you need from the plugin object. And here's how it changed. In Capacitor 3, you install each plugin package that is needed via npm and import the plugin directly from that package. When it comes time to use the plugin, the API has stayed mostly the same. For most apps upgrading Capacitor 3, these plugin migrations will be the majority of the work that needs to be done. The next optimization made is so that each platform lazy loads its implementation during initialization. Before, all the code for the web platform that was loaded and ran on native devices was included in the main bundle. This caused code to be included and executed for platforms that it didn't belong on. For instance, code for a web implementation of a plugin would be included and ran as part of the iOS project. Now, Capacitor 3 lazy loads the web platform implementation when the app starts up on the web, and it doesn't get loaded at all on native platforms. This helps keep the bundle sizes small, keeps startup time to a minimum, and makes sure that code from other platforms doesn't interfere with the current platform. Capacitor 3 brings in some developer experience improvements as well. Let's check a few of them out. By popular demand from the community, we created a new run command that streamlines the web dev workflow. Before, to test your app on either an emulator or a device, you would need to open up the native app in either Xcode or Android Studio and launch the app from within the native IDE. Now, with the new run command, you have the option to run npx cap run and the name of your platform. This will build your app, copy the assets to the native project, perform a native build, and launch your app on the selected device, all from within the command line. And to make things even better, the Ionic Live Reload Server can be used in unison with the new Capacitor run command. To do so, run Ionic cap run and your desired platform, then pass in the live reload flag. Now, any changes that you make through your code editor will automatically be recompiled and the device or emulator will refresh with those changes. Capacitor 3 now supports TypeScript as a valid format for the capacitor configuration file. Before, the config file was JSON, but with TypeScript, you can configure capacitor in a type-safe manner along with auto-completion and code comments. Also, you can specify different configurations based on the development environment, such as development, QA, and production, as well as leverage environment variables to customize the app experience. Last, I want to show you the new permissions API in Capacitor 3. In previous versions of Capacitor, you didn't have much control of when the permissions dialog would show up. Basically, the dialog would present itself the first time the API that needed the permission was accessed. In version 3, you now have a programmatic way to check if permissions are granted, as well as request permissions beforehand. This gives you the ultimate power in waiting for the exact right moment to ask for permissions, and ups the chances that the user grants them. At Ionic, we've always believed in the power of open source and the open source community. With the launch of Capacitor 3, we've taken a fresh look at how we can improve our investment in our wonderful community, which is why we created the Capacitor Community GitHub organization, where we have curated the best capacitor plugins and contributors and brought them together in one place. For more info, check out the community page on GitHub. Next, I'm going to pass the mic back over to Mike, and he's going to dive into some demos. Stick around to the end, and we'll be here to answer any questions. Thanks, friends, and happy coding.
Awesome job, Eli. Thank you for all of that. I'm going to remove that. Remove Eli. Thank you, Eli. We'll see you in a little bit. Everyone, Eli will be back. We will have some questions toward the end. So if you think of something and I don't go over it, let's take a put it in the chat and put in a little doobie-doo down the bottom, and we'll answer that. So let's bring up my screen. We're going to go over some of the major parts that make Capacitor 3 so awesome, right? A lot of this has to do with all the things that Eli brought up and how it just makes working with these native APIs, a whole lot simpler than previous releases. So I just have this app right here. It's a little note-taking app that I've been developing. Whenever I have like some random things that I want to keep track of, I just throw it in this little note app, and I can just save them right away. So if I'm inside this app, well, let's take a look. I just have the live reload server going right here. Let's open up the main part of our app, right? I'm going to ignore the fact that, I already have some of the plugins installed. So I'm using the latest releases of Angular. I'm using the latest releases of Capacitor Android, Capacitor iOS, and all of the core plugins. So this is already on V3. So we're not going to go through the whole migration process. We're going to assume that, you've read the migration guide at least a little bit. With this, we are also using this nifty little package here called NGX Quill based on Quill.js. This is going to be how we make any edits or do some rich text editing. So if I come over here to click this plus button, this is my little text field. Hello from my notes. And I should be able to save this and just have all the formatting. This is nothing special. This is not the main point of our talk, but it's just nice to know what kind of technology we're working with. So I want to start off by saying I know somewhere in this app, there's a collection of notes that I've already written. I want to bring those in, and I want to be able to I want to be able to display them here inside this app. So let's go to our home page and start to do this. So inside of our home page, we're going to first start off by importing the directory enum and then the file system class from Capacitor file system. This is how we're going to get access to all of the core features, all of the directory lookups, and make sure that we're doing it in a very type-safe way. From our imports, we want to come down to this ng on init. Now, on init, we're going to actually request permission to get access to the file system. This is going to be part of that permissions API where we can say, hey, user, can we get access to the file system? Users can accept or reject, and it's up to you as the developer to be able to handle situations where those permissions are either accepted or rejected. This just returns a quick little promise that we can say either yes or no, did they accept it? So this is pretty nice. From here, we're going to call this a init file system. Now, init file system is just this little method that we have, and it's going to call makedir and readdir. Well, what are those doing? Well, let's come down to makedir. Makedir at this point is going to go ahead and try to make a directory. So in here, we're using async await just because it's modern JavaScript. We can have nice things like async await. And inside of this, we're just going to go ahead and say, hey, file system, make this directory. We're going to give it a prefix path of notes. And the directory is going to be stored in the documents directory. Now, what is the documents directory? Well, it's a member of the enum directory. The documents directory on iOS, it is the app's document directory. Pretty self-explanatory. On Android, it's the public documents folder, so it's accessible from other apps. It's not accessible on Android 10 unless the app enables legacy external storage. So we have access to all the file system APIs that we would want. We could store this not only in documents, but we could store it in other folders. We have plenty of options here. So we're going to go ahead and call makedir. This is going to just set up a little directory for us. It's going to be real nice. What about that readdir? What's that going to do? Well, readdir is going to do exactly as the name implies. We're going to read a directory. So in this case, we're going to make use of filesystem.readdir, passing in the same directory and path prefix from our make directory. So we're just going to either make a directory if it exists, and if it does exist, read the files from it. Again, we are using async await here, so we could destructure the files coming off of this file system readdir call. Now, once this is done, we're just going to do some quick little sorting here. We're just going to say, hey, our class member notes is going to equal files.sort, and just do like a quick little sort based on the date in the file name. So let's write this and then come over to our app. And lo and behold, we have all of our notes being displayed here. We have notes from a little bit ago. And if we go over to our storage, the fun thing here is that Safari doesn't actually have a file system API. So what we can do is actually make use of IndexedDB to mock it out. And if Safari gets access to the native file system API coming in from projects like Fugu, we can start to switch out that implementation and give you something that actually has full file system access. But for now, we can actually just handle it accordingly and prefix everything with this with IndexedDB. So this is really nice. We're bringing in all the notes, but we don't have this save and close and delete functionality working. Let's try to add this back in. So back in our editor, we can come over here to our edit page. We're going to start off with the same move, and that is including the imports for directory. In this case, we're including encoding as well, and then the file system class, all from Capacitor file system. Now, this is a component that we're showing as a modal. We are passing in a name as a property. This could be something that you could pass in through the modal controller.create, pass in the component and the component props. We're just setting up the little toolbar inside of our Quill.js instance. And then what we're going to do is come into this ng on init, and then we're going to say, okay, if we have a file that we are passing in, we're having a file name. Well, let's go ahead and let's read that file. So we're passing in the file name directly whenever we click on something. We're going to say file system read file, giving it that path, the directory, and then the encoding, because we're using UTF-8 for everything these days. Let's just use UTF-8. Then once we get the data from this read file, we can set the data bindings inside of our component to load that data up. This is pretty great, pretty simple, just a couple different lines. And again, async await, this is lovely. This makes the whole process feel very synchronous. So once we have this set up, we could come over, click on a note. Now we want to say, maybe we make some edits to this. How do we actually go through and save those files? Well, we can come over to the save, and we're going to do a couple things here. Inside of our save function, we are first going to say, are we saving an existing file or a brand new file? If it's an existing file, meaning if this.name is set, we're just going to use this.name as a new file name. If not, create a new name based on note and then date.now. Pretty easy way to create a unique file name. When we come over to our actual implementation for this, we just say await file system.write file, pass it the path name, because we know that file is going to be the right thing. We'll have data, so either the content that we type in or no content at all. This way we can account for every situation, save it into the documents folder, and then set the encoding to UTF-8. And when that's done, we can dismiss the modal. This is awesome, right? This is great. We have all this working. What about deleting a note? What if I have a note in there and I don't really need it anymore, and I just want to delete it? Well, if we can write a file, you better believe that we can actually delete a file. So inside of file system, we have this delete file method. Again, we pass it the path and then the directory. It's a promise, so we just want to wait for this promise to complete. And then we can call modal controller dismiss. It's all just pretty self-explanatory, I would hope, with the method names and how all this operates. It should feel pretty close to how I like to think of it. I like to introduce it to people as, if you've done Node's file system API before, this should feel pretty familiar. So with all this in place, we could come over to our app. Let's see, we're going to open up this note. Hello, it's me. Hello from the other side. And we're going to hit save. We can go back to that note, and all that data is persisted. Pretty nice. If we no longer need this note, we can just hit the trash can, delete it. And once this is done, it's all good. We can open up a new note, and I can say, hello, Ionic fam. We're writing a note live. And then, let's see, make this bold, italic, and and underline. So that way we have all the formatting. We can hit save. Note that that note's not going anywhere. So this is really great, right? If we were on a progressive web app, safe to the user's home screen, we're still going to get access to the same type of interactions. And this is just inside of the browser. As Eli mentioned earlier, we can deploy this pretty quickly to the device simulator or to a real device by just using the capacitor run command. And since I happen to be using Ionic, we have some extra features in here that allow you to pick where this goes. So I'm just going to come over here to my live reload server, and I'm going to stop that. And then I'm going to run Ionic cap run iOS -- live reload. Now, I've already saw this come up in the chat, but I do want to address it here. By doing Ionic cap run iOS, we're automatically going to use this tool called native run. Now, native run will allow you to pick and deploy to whatever emulator you would like to use, but some people don't want to deploy right away to an emulator. They want to pick their options. They want to have multiple emulators running. Basically, they want to be able to have multiple targets and not have native run handle things. Well, to do that, you could also just pass the -- open flag, and this is going to open up the native IDE for this case. So if we're on iOS, we're going to open up Xcode, and if we're on Android, we're going to open up Android Studio. Pretty simple. But for me, I don't really need this. I don't want to open up Xcode. Anytime I get to save by not using Xcode, is pretty awesome. So let's just run cap run iOS -- live reload, and we're just going to let this go. Now we have plenty of simulators to choose from. An iPad Air would be pretty cool. I just want to go iPhone 12. I don't need to do the Pro Max, the Mini. Just pretty simple simulator will work for me. Now, this is also the pretty awesome stuff that is happening in Capacitor 3. If you've noticed, we have the Capacitor app, file system, haptics, and the keyboard plugin automatically included. This means that we're going to get pretty good access to the keyboard for events, haptics for any of that click and kind of that feedback that you get. So pretty awesome stuff. We are just going to let this run and then also run our dev server with ng-run app serve -s host. -s host, what is it? Localhost and 8100 for the port. Now with this in place, capacitor run sync. We'll give it a minute. And you can see I already have my simulator kind of run, but we're just going to let capacitor run bring this up for us. Again, if you have any questions, please throw them in that chat, and we will get to them after everything is done. This is going to be pretty awesome. Okay. Awesome. So our app is running. This is going ahead and just up on our iPhone. Give it a second. The problem with trying to run a stream and everything all at once is that your computer likes to take a little bit longer to move. So our app is up and running. I can, go up to my editor, prove it, go to the homepage of HTML, and instead of notes here, let's just say my notes and my notes save. Do we have live reload? We do. So everything is just working. Instant feedback. Now let's come over here and open up our modal and start to edit our notes. Oh no, this is really, really a good case to see, okay, what's going on? Why is this not debugging? So I'm going to open up Safari again. And I'm just going to go over to our develop, go over to Safari's DevTools, and open up remote debugging. So this is built right into Safari. There's nothing special. You have the same features as well if you are doing things like Android development. You can just access this using Chrome's developer tools. So let's just do a quick little reload, see what's going on. Awesome. This is really good. Now let's try this again. Awesome. Sometimes you just need to, put it under the pressure of having DevTools open. So inside of our app, let's just go ahead and type some notes. A note was here. We can hit save and have that note automatically in there. This is all just going to do the same thing as before. Let's see. We'll go to heading, bold, underline. We can make this an ordered list. We can make this not an unordered list. Make this a heading. This is all working as we would expect. And, let's hit save. So we have that really nice native experience. Our apps are accessing the native documents directory inside of this app. So if we were to delete this app, we could still persist some of this. You could still persist some of this data thanks to how the device partitions everything. But we're still just saving it in a nice little sandbox. So we know that at least on iOS, we're not going to leak out any sensitive data. Android, it might be a different case. So at this point, if we want to take this and deploy it to Android, we can just stop our server. We can do Ionic cap run Android, but I only have so much time, and I don't want to waste it all just waiting for Android Studio to start up. So we're just going to not run this for now, but if you have Android Studio set up on your machine, you can go ahead and deploy to that platform and get all of your Android development needs done. So with all that wrapped up, let's hand this back to Eli so that way he can wrap up our presentation and bring us to the Q&A portion. So let's bring Eli back.
Awesome. Great stuff, Mike. Let me back over here. All right. That was a great demo. Thank you. Okay, so to learn more about Capacitor, here's a couple of resources for you. The best place to get started is the website, capacitorjs.com. There you'll find links to documentation and all that kind of fun stuff. And then for all your questions and needs, hit us up on the forums, forum.ionicframework.com. All right, now let's open it up to questions. What do we got, Mike?
All right. So thank you, everyone. Can we get this like this? No, I don't need my face. Let's just bring it like this. It's not so much of a question, but I saw this during my presentation. And from our own member of the Capacitor team, you threatened your app with DevTools, and it was like, I'm sorry, I'll work now. Yes. Sometimes it's needed. Your apps have a mind of their own. You got to let them know that you're in charge. Let's get to the questions. What do we have? We have this question from Lewis, who's asking, does this live reload work on Android as well? Eli, does it work on Android?
Yep, sure. Because ultimately, what we're doing is we're using the live reload function of the Ionic development server. What really happens when you're using live reload is your Capacitor app, instead of pointing to the web assets that are bundled with the app, we're actually redirecting it to your local machine, where it looks at the web server on your local machine. So, like pretty much any type of web browser that's going to open that up is going to work for live reload.
Awesome. Let's see. Next question. And this is from Alberto. Can you hook up Google Chrome with debug tools like Safari for debugging?
Yeah. So what you want to do there is open up Google Chrome, and then if you go to Chrome://inspect, you'll see a list of devices or emulators that are currently connected to your system, and then you can just hit inspect there, and it pops up. You'll actually even get to see like a visual of what your app looks like at that time. Be careful though, because it's not interactive. Sometimes I'll see that and I'll try clicking on stuff inside of Chrome. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm running on a device over here. But yeah, from there you can see console logs and inspect elements and debug and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. Something to keep in mind, though, is that if you are using a real device, make sure your device is set into developer mode and you have USB debugging enabled. Can't tell you the number of times I have tripped up on that and forgotten, oh, I haven't enabled developer mode yet. It feels like that should be a brand new thing I just do all the time. This is a really good question. And one that actually I know for a fact we can indeed use a background geolocation. So I created a demo on a separate Twitch stream of all places using a background geolocation plugin from the Capacitor community org. So Mohammed, if you go to Capacitor community or github.com/Capacitor community, you can get access to look up the background geolocation plugin. Fairly easy to work with. I did my example in React. I will have to take a little bit to go find the URL, which I can share. But in the meantime, I can post that in the chat and we can get another question up in here. Let's see. Oh, this is a really good one. Can you talk about the difference between Ionic framework and Capacitor? Why this versus Flutter or something else? Eli, I'll let you take this one.
Okay, so first we'll start with Ionic framework. Ionic framework is a UI library that you can use to build apps that look like they belong on the native mobile operating systems using complete web technologies. So when you build an Ionic framework app and you deploy it to iOS, it looks like an iOS app. You deploy it to Android, it looks like an Android app. We give you all the tools and widgets that you need to build those types of things, where without Ionic framework, you'd kind of have to do all that by hand if you wanted to look like an actual native app on the phones. So it's just a UI library. What Capacitor does is Capacitor takes your web application and packages it up into a native binary and makes it so that you can distribute that binary to the app stores. And so Capacitor doesn't require that the app be an Ionic framework app. It could be any type of app that you would like to use. But then what also Capacitor does is it gives you access to native functionality and OS functionality of the app itself. So you can tie into native APIs. So you can do things like access the camera and geolocation and sharing and haptics and all that kind of fun stuff. So you can use both of them together, or you can use either one of them by themselves. They don't require each other in any type of way. And so you say you're a PHP JS dev who is looking to build a mobile app. Most efficient way possible, I would say those two stacks right there, Ionic framework, the Capacitor, is a really good option to go with your skill sets.
Great question. Yeah, it's something we hear about a lot. It's, you pick what technology you want to use. I think Capacitor and Ionic are a great pair, but you could also use Tailwind, or you could also use Angular Material. Or any material design implementation.
And to get to the second part of your question, like why this versus Flutter dev, because you said you're already a web developer. And so like using Ionic, you use all of your existing skills to build the mobile apps. Or if you're to go with Flutter, and don't get wrong, Flutter's a great platform as well. But Flutter, you're going to have to like learn a bunch of new stuff all over again to, just to be able to work on your app.
Yeah, excellent point. I mean, having to learn a whole nother language is pretty daunting task to begin with. But also to lose out on the the plethora of packages inside of the web ecosystem. You just don't get that at the moment with Flutter.
Yeah, like what was that that WYSIWYG editor that you used there? Quill?
That was Quill.js.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Like if that wasn't already available in another ecosystem like Flutter, like you're gonna have to do that all yourself.
And for a second, I didn't even need to write anything. I just installed the package and it worked like magic. All right, let's see. We have another question that I saw. This is not necessarily related to a lot of stuff, but it's still pretty nice. Currently prefers color scheme, doesn't work on Android. We created our own Capacitor plugin to report back the Android theme, but is there an easier other way to do this, or is this something that is going to be supported in the future releases?
So I'm going to assume this means you're trying to support like a dark mode. Is that what you gather?
Yeah, this is for the CSS media query for color scheme.
Yeah, and if I recall correctly, that doesn't work on Android devices. There is a API in Capacitor that you can query. I don't recall what it is offhand, but I'll try to look it up in the background and post it into the chat. So where you can query the operating system to ask it what its theme is. So I'll look for that and post it into the chat.
Yeah, there's multiple ways to get this, and probably it's a smart idea to have a fallback for if the media query doesn't work. You could always use something like a dedicated class on the actual body. Let's see. There was one really good one that I want to ask, and here we go from Joel Vergara. Yeah. What about Cordova plugins with Capacitor 3.0? Is it possible to build an app without Cordova plugins and just go full in on Capacitor? I think so.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The only time that you might run into a gotcha there is because the Cordova community has been around a lot longer than the Capacitor community has, that there might be something that it was built for Cordova that is not yet like available in Capacitor. But that's why we built in the backwards compatibility with Cordova plugins, so you could still use that plugin. But we would recommend that you try to search for a Capacitor version of the plugin first. And then, depending on where it is, it's also easy to just drop down into the native layer. And sometimes it feels a little daunting to tell a web developer, hey, go write some Swift or go write some Java to do it. But, some Stack Overflow searches on how to do something and pop that in and talk back. It's, really not that difficult. It's very accessible for even web developers.
There's a great talk from Kelsey Hightower, basically just copy and paste your way to a live technical demo. And I've done some of this. I think with great events like WWDC and some of the Google I/O stuff that just came out, a lot of these APIs are appearing in preview releases, and it's fairly simple to just copy the code and drop it in. Modern native IDEs are actually pretty good about telling you what you did wrong and how to fix it. So pretty cool stuff. This is actually a really good question, and one that I'm actually not quite sure about. Can you use old Capacitor plugins with Capacitor 3.0? So say if someone hasn't updated a community plugin yet.
Yeah, unfortunately not. There was some breaking changes to the underlying architecture about like how plugins are imported and whatnot, that the plugins themselves need to be upgraded to Capacitor version 3. So that's something that we're working really hard with, especially in the community, or getting people getting all those plugins upgraded and whatnot. And then if you do have Capacitor plugins out there, it's not really that difficult to do the conversion process. We have a guide for it on the docs on how to go through it and get it. But yeah, the plugins do need to be upgraded to Capacitor 3 to be compatible with it.
Hey, if you are ambitious enough, create a pull request, fork the plugin, create a pull request, send it back to upstream. Most of the stuff is open source, and when one person doesn't have time to make the change or is a little slow to make the change, be a good open source citizen. Send a pull request. Not only will you benefit from it, but the community will benefit from it. And it just feels like a really nice thing to do.
Yep. And if you're looking to get involved in the Capacitor community, check out the Capacitor community GitHub org. And we can invite you in, and there's tons of projects there that are definitely looking for help. So.
Yeah. All right. This is a real fun one, and I think it's a joke question, but I wanna put it in. Does Ionic gonna die? Is Ionic going to die? No, never. We're doing really well. The company is growing. Project is super popular still and getting a lot of traction. Capacitor is just another part into this to grow the community and make everyone successful app developers as well as web developers. So no, Ionic's not going anywhere. Fun question though. This is a really good one. Why use Ionic Angular if you can use pure Angular with Capacitor? Well, I know I'm going to use Ionic Angular because I just like the components. I like the fact that everything works really well and it feels right at home. I like that I get an iOS theme out of the box and not just Angular material or material design. And it's just my personal preference. I know Ionic and Angular much better than I do Angular and Angular material, just because it's what I use. Let's see. All right, this is a really good one. npx cap run Android can't see my emulator. Do not worry, Syrian Eagle. I also ran into this issue, and I think it has something to do with my Android environment. I mentioned this to a couple team members, and we need to debug it and figure out some docs for this. Android environment setup is pretty weird, quirky.
Yeah, maybe if you can pop over to the forums and post the issue and any, like if you're getting any errors or anything like that, post those as well so we can take a look at it.
Yes, excellent point, Eli. Yeah, you got this. So I think with that, let's just bring up the slides one more time. We have one more slide before we close everything out that I want to make sure we're all aware of. If you love this presentation, please check out ionic.io. Let's put the banner up there, ionic.io/IonicConf. IonicConf 2021 is happening June 23rd. We would love to see all of you there. Come check it out. It's a free event all day. Just hang out, learn some pretty great stuff about the Ionic Capacitor stencil, greater web development ecosystem. Hope to see you all there. For everyone else, thank you for joining today. This has been such a fun little stream, webinar. Been fun hanging out, hanging out with Eli. Enjoyed this a lot. Thank you all, and we will see you in the next one.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Take care.